Your time is 2 p.m. and this is the Tuesday edition of Market View right here on Eswatini TV. I am Nathalie Sitole. Pleasure to be on the program with you. First, in our business report today, as the rand continues to gain strength against the United States dollar, what does the shift in currency markets really mean for local businesses and consumers, of course? Does a stronger rand spell relief for the private sector? Business Eswatini's Chief Executive Officer Eswatini Dlamini unpacks these developments in our first story right here on the program today. Also on the program, the sugar industry remains one of the backbones of the country's economy. Today, we engage the Cane Growers Association on their contribution to economic growth, rural livelihoods, and national development. Just how big is this industry and what role do small and large-scale growers play in an era of rising costs and global market pressures? Are producers still making profits? To tackle these will be the CEO of Eswatini Cane Growers Association. But first, our business stories for the day. In our business stories, we begin with this. As the rand, which is pegged to the Lilangeni, continues to show strength against the US dollar, Business Eswatini says this remains positive for trade and could help government reduce the amount paid on international debt. Business Eswatini Chief Executive Officer Eswatini Dlamini has shared his views on how the stronger currency is affecting local businesses and trading conditions.
It's a good development for many reasons, one of which is we import quite a lot from overseas, from fuel to machinery for businesses, and all of those are dollar-based. This means then with the strength of Lilangeni, we will be spending less and less and less, which is a good thing for businesses. And the second thing which I would like to highlight is, but also you will note that we are what is arguably called a net importer, generally speaking. That in itself also will lower factory prices coming into Eswatini, and also hopefully those benefits then will cascade and find their way to our consumers to lower prices. If you have a lower price environment, it also helps with taming inflation, which is a good thing. You will note that inflation currently is standing at 2.3%, probably the lowest inflation ever. And with this development in currency strength, we hope that will feed into inflation, even to taming it further down to probably 2%. Inflation is, in my view, the number one cause of poverty in this country, because it affects the purchasing power, the money that you have in your pocket. With lower inflation implying that market prices are low, which means the price stability. It means your money in your pocket can go much longer and get more for you. That's a good thing. And I'm thinking the more the rand Lilangeni strengthens, the more we'll see the benefits come our way. But also some people can argue, and rightly so, that naturally the income or the money that you have in your pocket literally rises, even though no one has paid you even more, just because you can get more now with your money, which means you get more with less. It's a good thing. And we have seen just recently fuel prices are coming down. And part of that is because the rand is getting stronger. We're already benefiting from there.
The Central Bank of Eswatini has reported that provisional gross official reserves declined to 11.2 billion emalangeni last month, showing a contraction of 3.8% month-on-month. This is contained on the December 2025, January 2026 monthly statistical release by the bank on Wednesday.
The Central Bank of Eswatini states that the 11.2 billion emalangeni provisional gross official reserves for last month shows a contraction of 3.8% month-on-month and 12.9% year-on-year. The drawdown in reserves, according to the central bank, was driven by foreign currency outflows arising from trades with commercial banks as well as payment of government's fiscal obligations. Consequently, the import cover weakened from 2.7 months in December last year to 2.6 months in January this year. At the end of December last year, the government's net financial position weakened, with net claims on government rising to 2.3 billion emalangeni. This represented a substantial month-on-month increase of 420.7% and 33.7% year-on-year. The position was largely due to a notable fall in government deposits in addition to the rise in claims on government. Credit extended to the business sector rose by 2.2% month-on-month and 12.2% year-on-year to reach 11.9 billion emalangeni in December last year. The growth, according to the central bank, was driven by an increase in sectors like transport and communication, manufacturing, agriculture, forestry, and real estate. An analysis of credit to businesses by size indicated that the overall increase was observed in both small and medium enterprises and large enterprises. Credit to large enterprises, which constituted 67.7% of total business credit, rose by 1% to 8 billion emalangeni. Correspondingly, credit to small and medium enterprises, which accounted for the remaining 32.3%, also expanded by 4.9% to reach 3.8 billion emalangeni. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, Mbabane.
And that is your business brief. After the break, we speak to CEO of the Eswatini Cane Growers Association. Stay with us.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@escom.org.za. For more information, visit www.escom.org.za.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. And moving on with the program, the sugar industry accounts for around 5% of national GDP and over 30% of agricultural output. In the 2024-2025 season, the industry reported a 7.7 billion emalangeni in total revenue, with approximately 641,000 tons of sugar produced, and the majority of proceeds going directly to growers under the Sugar Industry Agreement. Today, we engage the Cane Growers Association on their contribution to economic growth and livelihoods. Given the impact of this industry, what role do small and large-scale growers play? We're now joined by the Chief Executive of the Eswatini Cane Growers Association, Dr. Sipho Ngambule-Sutu. Glad to have you on the program this afternoon. We've already just highlighted the impact or how massive the industry is, but perhaps you could shed light on the role of the Eswatini Cane Growers Association, the work being done by the association.
Good afternoon, Natsile, and good afternoon to the viewers, especially Bali Memo Eswatini. The Eswatini Cane Growers Association is the legal representative and spokesperson for independent cane growers in the country. As you might know, the growing of sugarcane in Eswatini is about 64,000 hectares in total, and about half of that 64,000 is under independent cane growers who are members of Eswatini Cane Growers Association. And the production of sugar in the country depends on the year, of course, but it's around 700,000. And of that 700,000, half of it is grown by independent cane growers in the rural areas. The association was established through the Cane Growers Act of 1967 to represent, speak for, and support independent cane growers.
We're looking at a contribution of around 5% to national GDP, and a significant share of agricultural output, billions reported in revenue in terms of the 2024-2025 season alone. When you look at it from those numbers and that perspective, how big is the sector to the overall economy of Eswatini today?
Like you have stated, the whole industry, you are looking at about 5% of the GDP, and that's the kind of contribution. The people who are actually members or license holders to grow sugarcane, they are just about 500. And they produce the amount of sugar I've spoken about. You have
All under the association?
No, the 500 is under the association, okay. Yes. You are asking how important it is. I think the numbers you have cited in a way answer the question. If you talk 7.7 billion, that is a significant portion of the national budget. And what happens with that amount, that's the gross amount. But once the expenses are paid and there's the net amount, then it gets shared by the millers and the growers. The millers take about 32% of the net proceeds, and the growers get 68%. Now, the growers, the majority of them are in the rural areas where they create jobs, and also the majority of them are families who benefit the rural community from the proceeds from the growing of sugarcane.
Would you happen to have a figure, Kasol, of just when you look at it from the perspective of improvement of livelihoods, job creation as well, how many cane growers would you say, or rather rural livelihoods, with them being linked to cane farming, how many households are more dependent on the sector?
The numbers are a bit difficult because they are different sizes. Like the companies may represent a number of families. But if you take the 500 and assume that each family is 4, you can actually get the number of families. But the number of beneficiaries from the sugar industry, especially independent growers, is in excess of 7,000 individuals around the country.
You talked about licensing.
Yes.
What does it take for one potential cane grower to attain a license and then be fully affiliated under the association?
Okay, let me start by mentioning that there is a committee called the Quota Board, which is formed by the Minister of Commerce it constitutes of independent cane growers who are my members, and then representatives from millers and some independent members. That committee is responsible for issuing what we call a quota. A quota is the license which enables you to grow sugarcane and guarantees you that your sugarcane will get to the mill. In order to get that permit, you need to, first of all, have land or access to land. And secondly, you need to prove that you have got an allocation of water to grow the sugarcane, because all sugarcane in the country is irrigated. And then the third thing that you need to do is to approach one of the mills and find out if they have space for you in their milling capacity. And with those three things, you are very likely to get the quota or the permit to grow sugarcane.
Right.
The good thing about it is once you have that permit, you have a guaranteed market. As soon as your crop is ready, you take it to the mill, and it is accepted if it is of good quality. And within 2 weeks, you get paid even before the product is consumed by the market.
Right. One needs land and definitely a vast amount of water to speak to the irrigation. Then you wonder, what are some of the challenges that are faced by farmers or cane growers when you look at it today?
Agriculture is heavily dependent on climate. And the dominant paradigm these days is climate change, which is a reality. Those of us who are growing crops know it's a reality. So what it means, the climate change, is that sometimes you get too much water, sometimes you get too little water. In an irrigation-dependent environment like ours, either extreme is bad. If you have got too much water, then that means you don't have too much sunshine. If you have got too little water, that means the crop has nothing to drink. So that is a huge challenge because it creates some uncertainty and difficult to predict what is going to happen. You even find it difficult to know how much and when you are going to need water. And water requires electricity. If you run to the other extent where there is not enough water, that means you have to use a lot of electricity, which is not very cheap, if I can use those words. And it's also a limited commodity in the country. And then that's one challenge. For us, we can't really, as farmers, change that. We can make a contribution, but we can't really change it or avoid it. So what we need to do is to actually adapt to the climate change, and then also look at mitigating it where we can. And adapting means that water which is limited, we need to make sure we use it when it is required. We normally talk of asking the crop how much water it needs. And that involves actually calculating how much water you have lost and how much you are supposed to replace. These days, there's technology which helps you to actually look at what the heat was like and what the evaporation was like, and then enable you to determine how much water you need. So as part of our adaptation is to be very precise on determining the amount of water that we need. And then the other area that I alluded to indirectly is that the energy requirement for sugarcane production is quite significant. If you combine petroleum and electricity, those account for about half of the cost of producing sugarcane. So we are always nervous about the prices, availability, and reliability of those products. And unfortunately, the costs tend to be going up. But there are some lucky times, like recently we were told that the cost of diesel was going down. And as I'm talking to you now, we are waiting for a new electricity tariff. And it's a very important subject for us. The other challenge is that with time, consumers become more sophisticated, and necessarily so. These days, it's no longer just buying sugar because it's sweet. Some consumers want to know how you produced the sugar. Did you take care of the environment?
Organic or not?
Did you take care of the employees? Did you take care of water and fertilizer? So we have to actually adapt to the realities of the market which we are serving. And that doesn't come easy. It comes with skills and it comes with financial and material resources. And the customer is always right. Therefore, it's upon us to actually work on adapting to what our customers want. And it's a challenge in the sense that it requires more from us than in the past. And then lastly, one of the challenges we are faced with is being a business person who has one source of income, being sugar. And we are in a situation then where we are looking at how we can deal with these challenges.
Kasolo, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for your time. You touched on some key issues, some of the challenges being the climate variability and, of course, input costs. But I like the solution that you bring up, that farmers or cane growers have to adapt. That was Dr. Sipho Ngambule, who is the Eswatini Cane Growers Association CEO, sharing insights on the sector. Not only its performance so far, but also just the opportunities for growth in the sector and, of course, its economic contribution to the country. After the break, we're in conversation with in-house economist Sanele Sibia.
The viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@escom.org.za. For more information, visit www.escom.org.za.
Welcome back for our market analysis. In-house economist Sanele Sibia joins us virtually. Mr. Sibia, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Second trading day for the week. What's trending? What's the latest?
Thank you, Notsile. So we're seeing quite a lot happening in the global economic, arrangements, including the geopolitical tensions between, the U.S. and Iran. So to begin with, I think we need to start in the U.S. and really just look at what is happening there. What we're seeing is the movement signaling as somewhat of a return to a bullish stance. And what is happening, we're seeing, the Nasdaq Composite Index and the Standard & Poor's Index not just coming very close to, record highs, more especially on the S&P, but the Nasdaq Composite is still struggling to get back to that 24,000 mark. Now, that's largely due to the fact that, there is still a bit of pessimism around the AI stocks, But what remains in the markets right now is we've seen inflation cooling off, and now what that means is we should expect the interest rates to actually go down in the US, and now that's going to support consumption spending and also support investment spending through low borrowing costs. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average has actually stayed above the 50,000 mark because of those news, and the Standard & Poor's index of 500 companies in the US is actually edging closer back to that 7,000 mark, which we saw in December, and now standing at $6,964.82 in yesterday's overall trade in terms of all share volumes. And then in London, what we're seeing when we move across the pond into the UK economy and the overall Eurozone, what is happening there is, there is still a lot of tension around Sir Keir Starmer's stance and Sir Keir Starmer's security as Prime Minister. That's largely driven by the fact that we've seen, that scandal, involving Jeffrey Epstein, and the links to Lord Mendelsohn there, who was the UK's ambassador to the US, and now that is actually really causing a lot of tensions within the markets, because it brings about a lot of uncertainty to say what happens when Sir Keir Starmer goes, and we've seen those calls coming, even from his own part. Now that's what's largely shaping the UK markets, but markets remaining resilient around over the 10,000 mark within the FTSE 100 when you look at that the UK economy. But in Germany and in France, we're seeing a bit of a rebound, largely due to positive earnings that we're seeing, and improved the investors' sentiment within the German economy, and around that improved demand. And we're seeing the DAX in Frankfurt, they're staying above, reaching the 25,000 mark, in terms of offshore trade volumes. In France, we're seeing the luxury goods, posting very good earnings, and now that is keeping the CAC 40 in Paris above the 8,000 mark. And I think it's sustaining that level, largely driven by those luxury stocks, your Louis Vuitton, your Gucci, and all of those other, luxury brands that we're seeing coming out of France. And then moving across to Asia, we're seeing a very beautiful day in Asia today, largely driven by sentiments, coming through from Prime Minister Takaichi's, a re-election there within the Japanese economy. The Nikkei there is standing very steady at above the 57,000 mark, which is another, 5-year record that we're seeing there. And, the Hang Seng is also moving to those news, sitting at the 27,000 mark, maintaining those post-COVID levels. And the Shanghai Composite Index is sitting at 4,128, maintaining that 4,000 overall share volume there, which is really good news. So we're expecting that the news that come with the re-election, landslide victory from the Japanese economy, now that might bode well for the Asian economy overall. And even though we have those weak fundamentals within the Hong Kong, the property market, and also within the mainland China, there in Shanghai, but overall the macroeconomics are looking good, and also the rebound in terms of those AI stocks. South Africa is back on the 120,000 mark, largely pushed by the fact that gold has maintained the second day above that $5,000 per ounce mark. And, in Eswatini, everything remains as usual. Gold has shifted back to that $5,000 mark because the indications are we should expect an interest rate cut from the US. And Brent crude is there at 69,000, might likely reach the $70 per barrel mark if the tensions between the US and Iran continue. We've seen, the US issue a travel advisory, for those ships that are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and now we know that's where a fifth of the world's Brent crude oil comes from. And then in terms of the currencies there. We're seeing, the Lilangeni on a very strong footing against the dollar, back below that 16 mark, but remaining volatile, relatively weak, given the fact that, investors are now expecting the US to actually lower their interest rates. And I know the same, we are on below the 19 mark against the euro, and also below at 9.76 yen per Lilangeni. Thank you, Notzile.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sibia, in-house economist Sanele Sibia, sharing insights on the day's trade. Otherwise, this has been Market View from myself and the crew. Thank you very much for your company. Take care.